Frank Doorhof, welcome to This Photo Life. How is it, man? How are you?
It's pretty good. We're still waiting for snow in the Netherlands. We do have a little bit, but hey, let's hope that we get a little bit of snow. So I'm doing fine. We are at home, of course, as you can see behind me now. So it's been a crazy year, of course, but hey, overall, we're still doing fine. And we hope that we continue, of course, and hope to teach again very soon.
That's the idea. That's the idea. When was your last workshop, man? In these crazy times?
Ooh, I think March last year when the whole pandemic broke out, that was when I taught twice a week and we did a lot of events and then everything stopped. And we decided to take it very seriously and just go like 2 weeks behind all the advices. So as soon as our local REVM said you can teach again, we waited for 2 weeks and then I did, I believe, 2 or 3 workshops. The main problem was, however, that I teach in very small groups. I love to shoot with 5 or 6 people in a group max.
Mm.
And with the pandemic going around, we need 3 people to make it profitable. Otherwise, I just lose money. So we tried to get groups of 4 people because we didn't want to do the whole groups. And then a day before you get like, hey, I'm not feeling well, or hey, my sister has a corona, so I have to. And we ended up with 4 workshops last year with only 2 people. So that means that you lose money. I still taught them because I absolutely love teaching and I don't care about the money per se, as long as you're working creatively.
Mhm.
But we decided it wouldn't be nice again to do it until it's safe, because I don't feel safe at the moment to teach, especially because we get people from all over the Netherlands and also sometimes from abroad. And I don't want people to be moving around when actually the government says don't move around as much as possible. So yeah, we decided to just stop teaching and do more online, like interviews. And we do a lot now with small, like loom cubes and non-light tubes and action figures.
I've seen
Because
that.
I miss shooting models, so we're just shooting action figures now, which can be pretty cool. And we're doing a lot of mountain biking, or I do a lot of mountain biking now. So normally I don't have time for that. So now I do have a lot more time. So yeah, I'm out and about a lot, and I love it. So
Oh,
maybe when
good.
this whole pandemic is over, there's one learning moment, and that's take at least 1 or 2 days off in the week to do something for yourself and not work 7 or 24/7 like we did. Just take a little bit more rest.
It can be easy to forget, especially when things are going well and the jobs are coming in, you're rolling over on that side of things. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's good that you're getting your exercise, and I think that's definitely good to keep in mind in these times. You don't live in a very urban area, do you, Frank, over in Holland?
I'm
Netherlands, I should say.
Yeah, I'm so incredibly lucky. And about the exercising, a lot of people gained weight during Corona. I actually lost a lot of weight during Corona. So
Fantastic.
that's a cool thing. Now, the thing is where we live, and I'm very lucky with that. We have a nice house, and we live in literally UNESCO heritage area. So when I take my bike, I'm 5 minutes away from, we call it, or it's actually called Scotland, but it's not Scotland like the country. It's Scotland with a K. And it's an old island that's literally in the middle of the area where I live, because where I live was sea. I believe 60 years ago it was still sea, and then they made a polder out of it, so new land. And we live slam bam in the middle. We sometimes call myself SpongeBob SquarePants because we live under the sea. So we still have a lot of the islands over here, like Urk, which has now been in the news a little bit less positive, but it's a beautiful, beautiful city. And in Urk is like 15 kilometers away from us. So and we have a lot of mountain bike trails here, not very high in your climbs and your descents, but it's very technical. So I love riding here. And yeah, it's just a beautiful area. So I'm very, very lucky because we can still go out. I can't imagine now living in a small apartment, like 3 stairs high with only one elevator, which you have to share with the whole building. That would be a pure hell. So yeah, we're very, very lucky.
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't be able to deal with that in the small contained space. Also in Bruges and where I live, I get lots of space. I also cycle. I happen to have a recumbent, left feet, as they say in Netherlands, so I go flat and then long distance.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
But even
nature,
I'm sorry,
nature
again.
riding and trails. So I don't
Mm,
like riding on the roads that much. So I always drove mountain bikes and never normal road bikes. I don't know.
really, I crossed between the two. I was even a bicycle courier way, 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 way back when in Canada. And I really love mountain biking, but I just found it was getting expensive with the knockouts I was doing. So I took to the road and with my tall, skinny frame, just started doing hundreds of kilometers.
It's fun, you know, as long as you're busy and you're doing stuff, it's great to get your mind off. Like my mind is always driving with ideas and a lot of noise in there with, oh, I still have to do this, I still have to do that. Oh, I have to call this person. And I found out that when I'm at home and I'm watching a movie, sometimes I don't even remember 5 minutes ago from the movie because you're thinking about 3 or 4 other things that you have to do. And I found out that when I bike, or especially when I'm in nature and you do the technical trails, and I'm a beginner, so technical trails for me is like probably the blue trails or the green trails. But I find out that when I'm in nature, it's like the volume button just goes down like boom in your mind, like go total zero. And everything is gone. And I love taking pictures there and just standing there and looking at nature. And that's the nice thing about the mountain bike trails. They go through the most beautiful areas of the forest. So it's literally like a guided tour through the most beautiful area. So it's great to just switch off. And I found out that when I'm back, I'm more creative. I grab my camera and I go like, oh, I want to do this. And it's a total reset. And I think that's one of the parts that I will take out of this whole pandemic thing. Like, okay, take a little bit more time for yourself. You don't have to be 24/7 the photographer and teacher. Also be a little bit more frank and do a little bit more hobby, like playing music, reading comics, and just driving around with your bike.
It can be easy to forget, and it's good that you picked
Yeah.
it up again, man. Especially for the music, you play you play and love your music quite deeply. You're even, I see online putting out some tunes, so that's
Yeah.
good that you're finding time for this. And actually, I noticed from a little bit of I try not to research my guests too much. I want to come in fresh, but I saw in one of your videos you got a wall of comic books behind you, and I love my comic books. They were actually a big inspiration visually for the photo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I When I was young, I started out with movies. I absolutely loved movies. I remember the first time I met Anna Week, I invited her over to our home to watch Young Guns, the movie.
Mm, great film.
And I had this whole Betamax collection of movies, and she just came into my room, and everything was set up for movies. And it's weird when you think about it. And actually, that whole visual part just translated back into later life with photography, of course, and video. And comics for me, when I started out with comics, it was all Batman and Spider-Man and the Hulk. And then I think there is a gap, like the same with my music. It's like my whole life stopped at 21 or 22. And I
Hmm.
started doing business, and I started out with a recording studio and later computers and photography and home theater, of course. And somehow I just missed that whole part. And I think 3 years ago, Scott Kelby, he heard some stuff that I played when I was younger. And he said, you really have to start playing again. Let's play at Photoshop World. And Rick Salmon is a very, very dear friend of mine. And he actually took me under his wing, like, okay, let's go to our room. And I was there with Scott and Rick, and we just played some stuff that we were going to play live on stage. And the only thing I remembered, I taught guitar for, I think, 3 years to local youth. And the only thing I remembered was the pentatonic scale. And my fingers literally bled. So Scott still has some blood on his guitar, probably from me. And I came home and I started playing again. And this is, I think, something, although it's a photography podcast, it's very important to realize that when you grow older and when you get more wiser, you actually get dumber. Because in the past, I had school. And then as soon as you have school, you do homework and you have your hobbies. And I found out that later in life, and maybe that's me because photography and computers and home theater are all my hobbies. I love them dearly. So for me, work was never work. It was always something that I love to do. It was my passion. The only problem that you get, and this is something that I really want to warn people for, is especially with creative professions, you can't be creative 100% of the time. So you can be creative 100% of the time, but you will find out that you're only creative 50% or 60%. And I found out that now that I play guitar again and I do a lot of mountain biking and I work with my comics and action figures and whatnot more, it sounds very childish, but somehow it's that reset button. I only need to be 1 hour in the room that I'm here to be 100% creative again. So when I found out that my creativity slumps down to, let's say, to a point where I go like, okay, let's do this. I know how it works. Just spend an hour here and I go, oh, I want to do this. And it's just a reset button. And I think everybody should have a reset button. It can be trains. or Lego or whatever. A lot of people love playing with that stuff, and it's not weird. It's creative. You're creating stuff, and that's always good. And with comics, especially what you say, it's that visual part. I'm a big Batman fan, and when you look at my pictures, the weird thing is I was shooting that style before I started getting back into comics again. And of course, when this is a really cool story. I went to America, and we stayed with a friend of us, uh, Rich, and he actually told me, like, okay, there's one Americana thing that you really, really have to see. There's this comic book store in Red Bank called Jay and Silent Bob's Secret Stash.
You went to the stash?
Yeah, I went to the stash. It was awesome.
Wicked.
And he showed me a small video of the guy standing there behind the counter. And it was a little bit like Pawn Stars.
Yeah.
Somebody comes in with a comic book. What is it worth? Oh, let me call a friend. And you saw the guys there. And a year before, we actually visited the gold and silver pawn shop in Vegas. And it was a huge letdown. It's very commercial. The guys that are on TV aren't there. They're never there. And it just looks weird. It's just a tourist trap. So he told me about the Jay and Silent Bob's, and he showed me the TV series. And I was going like, dude, I like comics, but I'm not really into it. You know what? We're going to go there. And the funniest part is you stand in front of the door and you go like, yeah, this is from the TV series. Then you open up the door and Ming is there and Mike is there. And you go like, really? Am I this lucky? Are you guys filming? And Mike just looked at me going like, no, dude, I work here. And I go like, that's so awesome. He said, oh, yeah, all the other shows, the people don't work there. We really work here. And I was going like, this is insane. So I met the whole cast.
Awesome.
And they were so awesome. So I showed them my work and I said, okay, a friend of mine sent me here because we're doing a vlog. And we also wanted to do a little bit of video inside a comic book store because, well, that's Americana, right? And he looked at my work and he said, man, you're going to love Batman. And I was just going like, why? And he said, because it's all so dark. And I started reading again and yeah, I totally got hooked on Batman. So thanks, Mike. And ever since I've been collecting comics again, and my preference goes to the old easy comics. Only you can't afford them, but those are the small stories like in the 50s. And they were like one comic with 6 or 7 stories, and they were all very short. It's when you don't know comics, compare it to the TV series like Twilight Zone, but then in a comic. There are comics from the Twilight Zones, but Easy Comics was really like what was it? Tales from the Crypt, that kind of stuff. I really loved it, the horror comics. And of course,
it was anthologies by the sound of it then.
Yeah, more like short stories. And then, oh man, there are so many science fiction and horror and thrillers and crime. It's just awesome. And it's really easy to read. It's like a 3-4 minute read per story. And then you go on to the next. So yeah, I love comics. It's a great way to get out of it. But it's also a great way to see certain things that with movies, you always have this limitation of what's possible. You can blow up a city if you have enough money or if you have enough processing power, right? Mm-hmm. In a comic, you can blow up a city without any money at all. You just draw it. Mm-hmm. So they are pushing that boundaries a lot. And I also think that's why comic book movies and series at the moment are so hugely popular, because nowadays we have computers, so we can recreate those epic battles.
Very affordably.
Too much, like with the Marvel universe, it's a little bit too. But yeah, I think you get so much inspiration from just reading the comics and storytelling, and it's one image, so it's very close to photography. And when you look at my photos, I always try to pose my models a little bit like they tell a story or there's something going on. It's not a pretty girl in front of a pretty backdrop. That's boring.
Yeah, you also have a very cinematic look to your photos, both composition and I find just final product towards the edit and everything else. Although having said that, you do a lot on camera with the flash. Do you think that your love of movies and comic books, either past or present, has been an influence on that?
You can never say it like that. I think we are hardwired. When I taught the workshops with PowerPoint presentations, when I started out, nowadays we do Q&As. I had this slide in there and it was a joke, and it's literally not really a joke, but it was meant as a joke. And I always told people like there is this thing about horizontal and vertical shooting. Mm-hmm. We always call vertical shooting the portrait mode, which is, I think, wrong for the very simple reason. If you shoot a portrait in portrait mode, you get a portrait that's really focused on the model because there's no room on the sides. So it's literally like this, and you shoot it like a portrait, and you have the whole model in there. You have a little bit maybe of her, how do you call it, the breast area.
The chest, yeah.
Chest, and that's it. Now, when you turn your camera around and you go in landscape mode, which they call landscape mode, which is pretty accurate because that's how you shoot landscapes, the image gets so more interesting because now you don't have to think about just getting the model in there. Also, where do you pose the model? Do you pose her to the left? Do you pose her in the center? Or do you pose her to the right? Where does she look? And the thing is, and a lot of people don't realize this, is we are hardwired to read from left to right, top to bottom. So if you place a model on the right side of your image, looking towards the left, the viewer will actually look at that image a little bit longer than when you place your model on the right, looking to the, placing her on the left, looking to the right, because then it will leave the frame, because that's also how we read a book. This is also why when you do advertising in a magazine, it's more expensive to advertise on the right side as on the left side, because people automatically look at the right side.
Of course.
Now, when you look at my images, you see that a lot of my images are shot in landscape mode. And you also see that we have a bright red logo. The red logo is always on the left bottom side. This is a little bit psychology. You start with the top, then you go to the model, and the model looks towards the logo, and the logo is bright red. So it's always an attention point. So that means that if you look at my images, you're always drawn to look at the images in a circle. You keep looking at the image. Now, when you twist everything around, just try it. If you're listening to this podcast, take one of my images, mirror it, and now see which one looks better. And you will find out that if the logo is on the right side, you hardly see the model anymore. And when the logo is on the left side, you will see the model, although the logo is actually the one that steers you. And that goes subconscious. You know what I mean, right? It goes into your mind.
Subconsciously, for sure. Yeah. Huh, interesting.
And I don't do it on purpose. It's just something that happened. And this was the slide that I wanted to tell people. So why do you do this? And the joke I made was actually think back about the Stone Age. When people were still outside, where were the guys? The guys were, of course, hunting the dinosaurs. And the dinosaurs and all the danger could come from the sides. So the men are trained to look in landscape mode. Now, where were the women? They were in the caves, of course, creating the food. Where did the danger come from? From the top. So women are actually looking in portrait mode. Guys are looking in landscape mode. The weird thing is you can say, hey, that's a weird joke. It's actually scientifically, I believe in a magazine called K.I.S.S. It's a Dutch magazine, which I read when I was a youngster. It actually literally stated that still in our DNA, it's embedded that guys are a little bit, but it's a little bit like a few percent more focused on landscape looks. And women are a little bit more sensitive for color gradations and differences in contrast. So they have better eyesight in the dark, but they are focused on portrait mode. I never tested it, but it's a very interesting thing to think about. And this is also, of course, why when you see a movie, there's so much room. And that's all because it was shot on, of course, a wide angle. Now think about Westerns when they shoot at 235 on 1 on CinemaScope, where you have even bigger black bars and a smaller area of your movie. This is where you can fit in so much information. And I actually started a movement a while ago, and it never got serious. Don't call negative space, but call it positive space, because it really adds to an image. And if you take out the negative space, the image falls down. So add more space to your images. And how do you add more space? Very simple, by turning the camera instead of portrait into landscape. So when you go to my portfolio, and week often has a really hard time when, for example, Sony says, hey, do you have a portrait image? Because we need it for an advert, and we need an image that's actually in portrait mode. And she really has to look for it. So I have to force myself during workshops to not only shoot in landscape mode, but sometimes also shoot something in portrait just for that cause. But if it was up to me, I would probably shoot 99% in landscape mode. And that has something to do with that movie, of course. It's the way that I'm triggered.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I notice myself, the further I get into photography, the less I'm using portrait mode. Yep. Or vertical, if you will. Horizontal just seems to fit the best. I mean, I shoot a few genres, either commercially or just for pleasure, but it always seems to work best just to be able to play with the space next to them. I think that's also why I lean towards wide angles quite so aggressively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I, I
I
think
guess to make sure I get my photo questions in, what focal length do you find yourself on most often?
so to say that I started out with, I think most people do with a 70 to 200, 2.8,
Yeah.
because that's the portrait lens. And it's a really weird story, actually. My first impression was always that the 70 to 200 just gave me the shots, and it does. It delivers. It's always perfect. It's always great. The only problem is you can't use it creatively because 70 mil already compresses. When you go to 200, it just compresses more. But there's not there is a difference, but it's not like huge.
Yeah.
At one point, I started using a 24 to 70 because I like the compression in a portrait, but that's at 70, you already have that compression.
Yep.
But I started finding out that the more I grow in my photography, the more I actually went from 200 to 70. And now most portraits that I shoot are in the 50 to 70.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I love the 24. Like almost everything that you see is 3/4 is 24 because it has this weird way of distorting your image. It doesn't really distort, but you can create something really cool with it. For example, if you have somebody with a big forehead,
Yeah.
with a 70 to 200, it will always show up. With the 24, you just lower your angle just very, very slightly. And because the camera doesn't see depth, it only sees stuff that's closer by, it renders it bigger, and stuff that's further away, it renders it smaller. And the more you go towards wide angles, the more that actually got enhanced. So when you shoot a portrait on, let's say, 35 mil, and somebody has a big forehead, just lower yourself slightly, and the forehead will actually just shrink down because you're shooting up instead of straight on. And as soon as I found that out, man, I'm in love with the 24 to 70 for almost everything. And I have the 12 to 24. And the 12 to 24, I just love for walking around on the street. And 24 to 70 is almost always on my camera. And the fun part was that there's actually a slide in my presentation that I always use. It's the progress of the photographer. And then I start out with, when you start out with photography, you start out on the P mode, like professional, panic, or whatever you want to call it. But everything works. And then at one point you start talking with people and they go like, oh man, you have to shoot on AV mode. And the first thing, of course, you say audio video mode. No, aperture priority mode. You go like, okay, what does it do? Well, you can create the hole inside your lens, and the smaller the gap, the bigger the number. And you go like, oh, wait a minute, the smaller the gap, the bigger the number. What the hell? Yeah, and then you create your depth of field. You go like depth of field. It's very confusing for people when they start out. And of course, nowadays, 2.8 is always great, right? No, not really, but it's boring. But you know what it does, right? Big hole gives you less depth of field. Small hole gives you more depth of field. Longer lens compresses more. So you know all the theory. But when you start shooting AV mode, you have to learn this. So in P mode, everything works. You go to AV mode, you lose 50% of the shots. Then you find somebody that tells you like, man, are you still shooting with zoom lenses? Those are so terrible. You have to use primes. Okay, so now you buy primes and you get even more confused because now you see somebody in the distance, you take your image and you go like, hey, it's small. Yeah, you're using a prime. Okay, so you need a longer prime. Then you shoot somebody, hey, it doesn't fit the frame. Yeah, you need another prime. And you start switching, and it gets more difficult. And then finally, yeah, the straw that breaks the camel's back, as they say, you find somebody that tells you, are you still shooting on AV mode? You should shoot on manual mode. So now you're shooting primes, you're shooting manual, and you don't know what the hell's going on, and you're missing shot after shot, and the only thing you think about is that P mode again. Now, I found out that at one point, I find it very, very important that I shot prime lenses, that I knew everything, that I could shoot manually. And I actually end the slide with, you know what a professional cares about? Only getting the shot. So that means that a year ago, just before our trip to South Africa, I actually ordered the 24 to 240 from Sony. Now, if you asked me 10 years ago, would you ever buy a 10 times zoom? I would look at you and go like, are you nuts? Of course not. Those suck. Those are terrible. Slower out of focus. They aren't sharp. It's a terrible lens.
It's a compromise. It's a Swiss Army knife, so you don't have a dedicated knife. Yeah.
And you know the cool compromise? I can take my 24 to 70 G.A.S 2.8, which retails for, I believe, 2,100 euros on a Sony A7R4, and I get great shots until I don't get great shots again. So in South Africa, we were in a car and we drove through an area where they literally told you, if you go out here, we don't know what's happening. You could die, literally. So we stayed in the car and we decided to shoot through the car window. So we cleaned the whole car inside out, all the windows. So I could shoot literally from every angle I wanted. I could never pull that off with the 24-70 because sometimes you open up the window and you want that wide angle shot, but you can't stay there for long because people will come up to you and they're very aggressive. It was Johannesburg, so it's dangerous, right? So you want to keep moving. You don't want to stand still.
Tricky
By
place,
using
yeah.
the 24-240 and just bumping up the ISO to make sure that I have 1,000th of a second of shutter speed, I could literally open up the window, shoot on 24, zoom into 240, have a portrait on the street. I showed those images to people and they were going like, are you nuts? I was going like, why? You were on the street there. Are you nuts? You can't walk there. I said, no, they were shot from the car. How the heck can you shoot from the car a portrait with a 240 mil? Yeah, but you also shot wide angles. Yeah, I use a 10 times zoom. And the funny part is, even when they see the images and they're tech sharp, they go like, yeah, but that's a very cheap lens. And I go like, okay, it's $8.99, so it's a cheaper lens. And they go like, I said, but do you like the images? And some people literally say, I loved them before I knew how you shot them. And I was going like,
I believe it.
Professionals only care about one thing, getting the shot. So what is my opinion on shooting? In the studio, mostly the 24-70 2.8. The reason for this is very simple. I have a constant aperture of 2.8. And in the studio, you shoot a lot, of course, on f8, f11 or whatever, but your autofocus works on the widest aperture possible. Now, I'm using a lot of backlighting, I'm using a lot of lens flare, so I need a lens that really is not hindered by any form of getting not enough light to focus. So 2.8 is great. Now, as soon as I go out, I immediately switch over the lens to the 24-240 for the very, very simple reason. I have so much range. And I don't care that it's a 5.6 lens. I don't care because for the very simple reason, outside I'm shooting mostly on f4 5.6 and that's within that area. And for auto ISO, a lot of people hate auto ISO. I absolutely love it because you don't have to think about the ISO anymore. The only thing I think about is, okay, what aperture do I want to use? How do I want to play with my depth of field? What shutter speed do I need? And after that, I don't have to think about the ISO. The camera does everything. And again, the only thing that's important for me is getting that shot. And if it's 1 megapixel less sharp than another lens, try zooming in on a 70 mil, create a 240 mil image of that. You will never get the same sharpness as if you shoot 60 megapixels on 240. So in between that 24-70, yes, the G.A.S. is a lot better. But as soon as you go up, I have to crop on that original image. And at that point, my lens doesn't matter anymore because I will lose so much information that I can better use a lens that is slightly less sharp, but I have my full resolution. So yeah, I'm a big advocate of just getting the shot and don't worry too much about gear. But of course, Sony camera. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, the gear matters definitely. And Sony, let's be fair, is
doubt.
totally knocking it out of the park over the last few years.
Oh.
They basically blazed the trail into mirrorless properly, in my opinion.
I started out with Sony with the A99. And A99 wasn't released yet, so they called me up and they said, do you want to do a review on the A99? And I was going like, I'm not interested. I'm shooting Canon and I'm not interested in Sony because, let's be honest, Sony, it's not a camera. And they said to me, well, you know what? The camera isn't out yet. It will take another 2 months before it's on the market and you can say whatever you want. And I was going like, okay. And I was not in a foul mood, let's be totally honest, but sometimes you get gear and they go like, you have to spend like hours and hours reviewing it and testing it. And sometimes they even email you like, hey, did you receive the package? Yes. When can I see a review? It's like, dude, you send me something now. Yeah, can we see the review before Friday? And I was going like, what the hell do you want? Do you want an unboxing? Because I can do that before Friday. But if you really want a review, I need at least a month with that product. Because first you have this wedding season where everything is beautiful and then you start to hate it and then you start to find love again. So that has to be within a month for new products. So I'm testing, for example, now the Sony Xperia phone. The first day I loved it. The second day I hated it. And now I really don't want another phone anymore. So you need that time. And with the Sony Alpha 99, they told me also that, okay, you invest that time, but you can be honest. So if you're not honest, if you're not positive, you can still post a review so you don't lose that time. And I was going like, okay, in that case, I want to try it. And I wasn't 100% over the moon with it. I did like it a lot, especially the dynamic range. But somehow the whole viewfinder thing, that electronic viewfinder, I found it really hard to focus on because I'm shooting medium format, I'm shooting film cameras. EVF is different.
Especially in the beginning.
Yeah, especially in the
That
beginning.
little microsecond of lag, if
And
nothing.
I had to do the press conference, I believe in Dubai at that moment, to introduce the camera. And we did a lot of work to get it tethering, because at that point the camera wasn't possible to tether. And for me, that's vital, especially when you do a press conference with the camera, a press release, sorry. And we actually got into contact with a company, a Russian company, and they create drivers for Lightroom. And they had some drivers for other Sony cameras. So I discussed it with Sony, like, hey, can I send them some stuff from the A99 if they keep it under NDA? And they somehow they were very, very easy with it. Just try it. And I think 1 hour before the release, they actually sent me an image, a package, like, hey, try this out, install it, a package of software, I mean, install it and see if it works. So literally 1 hour before I had to go on stage and show the new Alpha 99, we were trying in Lightroom to get it tethering. And the moment it got in, they actually told me, like, okay, don't shoot more than 10 images. As soon as you see the images coming in, just tell your story, don't shoot anymore, because we don't know how stable it is. And I actually did it. I shot 5 images tethered, and then I stopped and just talked about the camera. And the thing is, when it clicked for me, was actually, there was this harbor and there was this fisherman, and I had 2 cameras with me, the Canon, my main camera, and the Sony Alpha 99. And there was this huge backlight situation. So I grabbed my Canon, shot the image, and realized, oh my God, this is never going to work because there's a lot of background light. So let's do spot metering. So I went into the menu, spot metering, take the picture, look at it. Okay, exposure compensation, take the image. Okay, now it's great. I grabbed the Sony, hold it in front of my eyes, and I went like, exposure compensation, boom, nailed it, bam. And I was going like, this is really interesting. And at that point, I actually made my switch to Sony. And now with the Alpha 7 series, the R1 was just amazing for high resolution. And now the R4 is like, it's insane. Every time you see a release from Nikon or Canon or Fuji, they improve, like, let's say 10 points. And most of those points you go like, okay. So when I switched from my 5D Mark II, I believe, to the 5D Mark III, it was mostly the autofocus that was really, really a big step up. But everything else was a little bit the same. When you look at the Sony spec sheets between the A7R III and the A7R IV, it's like 2 A4s filled with new options. And you go like, Sony is literally kicking it out of the ballpark. So I'm very, very glad to be with Sony actually from the start with the A99. So, and at the moment, I don't think anything can beat Sony. The only thing that's really interesting is Fuji. And I think when you look at the market in about 5 or 10 years, I'm very, very afraid for Canon and Nikon. And I think the new market leader will without a doubt be Sony, followed by Fuji. And I think Fuji is really smart because they don't focus on full frame cameras because they're going to lose it from Sony. They are focusing on medium format cameras in a DSLR body. And this is something that just blows my mind. I love medium format.
Yeah, towards a DSLR price too, if I can throw that in. That's part of the reality for us, for sure.
Yep. It's 8,000 euros for a medium format camera. Now, some people
Five
to this.
Five for the new one. Yeah.
Look at that. I was calculating with lenses. So
just to get started on the body, I guess, if you're talking about with lens, yeah.
Yeah, let's say under 10K, you have a fully kitted out medium format. It's not full frame, but it's medium format. Yeah. And for a lot of people now listening, they go like, Frank, that's a lot of money. Do realize that when I started with medium format, I bought the Dutch version. So that means the cheapest version available. And that was 25,000 euros. 25,000 euros. And that was literally, you weren't ashamed to be shooting that back, but it was literally, if people looked at it, go like, oh, you shoot. Yeah, okay. You wanted to have medium format, right? And you couldn't afford a Hasselblad. Yeah. And then later on, I upgraded to Leaf. And with Leaf, you're talking about prices of 35,000 euros for only the back. Yeah. So when you calculate that, that was only like 7 years ago. And now Fuji is doing it for 5 for only the camera. And that's including the camera. So it's not including a lens, but it's including the camera and the back. it's insane. So I
Yeah.
think Fuji will be, without any doubt, on the market for a long time, as long as Sony doesn't start using medium format sensors. So I think that market will be cool. Sony for the full frame, Fuji for the smaller cameras, and of course the medium formats. And I think they complement each other very, very well.
Yeah. I think those two companies also, if we're talking about the brands and where it's all heading, I mean, just it's a little bit crystal ball, of course. The last year has proven that nothing is always stable.
No,
But I think Sony and Fuji will also gain and keep a lot of ground by the fact that I think they're perceived as a little more up and coming, innovative. Canon, Nikon, I mean, okay, you get your product right, you can come to the party a little bit late with mirrorless and everything, but they were really late. And Canon's shining a little more on the innovation front as they get into mirrorless, but I worry deeply for Nikon, which I use as my full frame system, for where it's heading, because I don't think they're pushing forward as much as they
no.
could be, like, especially Sony. I mean, that's basically how they made their name. Every time you got a new release of the camera, your jaw drops and goes, I get that in my upgrade instead of just a
Yeah.
little bit, another point of autofocus and 10% getting there. Push the boundaries a little bit. And I might be ranting on this, but like Canon, for example, with the 8K option, but limited, I'm okay with that. People got into a tizzy going, I can't do 10 minutes of 8K slow mo at 120 frames a second. Well,
Why should
dude, we're in
you
the
10
future.
minutes learn how to shoot video?
Yeah, yeah.
If you want to do a live concert or you need something like a performance, you need more minutes. But trust me, I shoot video for a long time. Most of the stuff, even for clients, we recently did something for the energy transition for our local government.
Uh-huh.
Most clips, even the interviews, were below 4 minutes. And those were the interviews. They were 4 minutes because nobody can, yeah, I can do it and you can do it, but we can talk because we're used to it. We can talk for longer. But a lot of people go like, I love what did I say? And you have to stop the camera anyway.
Yeah.
And all the in-between shots, dude, do you really want to watch 10 seconds or 10 minutes of going from left to right in a pan? You don't need 10 minutes unless, of course, you do concerts and you do longer performances. But most people that do video, if they would be limited to 5 minutes, I would probably do 90% of my work with video without any problem, because I never film more in one scene than 5 minutes.
Yeah,
Although
it's,
your
it's
mileage may vary, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think also that's where I think gear sometimes gets a little bit crazy in our community. I mean, that particular feature, they're not advertising it as the biggest feature on there, maybe something flashy, but they're at least innovating and offering it to the consumer. I mean, whether it gets stable or not in a future release.
I also
Eh,
think the main problem is that people drive themselves crazy. It's a G.A.S, gear acquisition syndrome.
oh yeah.
And of course, I love guitars, so I collect guitars. Thank you, Scott. Um,
Thanks, Scott, for that addiction.
yeah, thank you, Scott, and especially Rick Salmon for that. I hate you, guy. But then when you look at, let's say, for example, let me see, 1 second. Let me grab this one. So I don't know if you see video, but this is, if you look at it like this, it's a normal white Strat, right?
Hmm.
If you look at the headstock, you see that it's a Fender USA Strat.
Hmm.
Now, in all honesty, those Strats, especially secondhand, are pretty expensive. So I saved up for that one. That's about 850 euros secondhand. I also have an Ibanez Jam, which is new around 4,000 euros. I bought it from the, I believe, 90s for 1,700 euros. So those are my two main guitars. Very, very expensive for me. And in all honesty, and this is the same what happens with photography, I have about 10 guitars. Trust me. I can also grab a Musima, which I bought for 200 euros, which looks exactly the same as the Fender. Is there a difference? Yes, there is a difference. But as soon as you go through the mixing console, as soon as you hear it in the mix, there's no difference at all anymore. And the same goes for gear. I have all this external gear because I don't like to use inbox reverbs or whatever. So I have everything external, which I love. And it's not about the quality. And this is something that I think a lot of people have to realize when you are one of those persons that actually buys new gear every time because they think you can get better, try to buy vintage gear. If I play on my guitar and the white guitar is literally a guitar that I lost it for ever since. Even when I was young, I wanted that white Strat. Jimi Hendrix, Yngwie Malmsteen, right? It's those iconic Strats. Trust me, when I grab that Strat and I play a blues, every note bleeds just a little bit more. Every tear is just a little bit bigger than when I play it on the Musima. Now, in all honesty, they are both equal. They are both sounding the same in the mix. So why is that one guitar sounding so much better? It's because when I hold that guitar, I feel the lust I had for that guitar for my whole life. That's why it has to be a USA Strat and not a made in Mexico. But when you compare the two, it's insane that I bought a USA Strat because I paid 300 euros more for absolutely probably nothing. But it's the moment I hold that thing, it connects with me. And that's the same with a camera. And with a camera, you have to realize that a guitar is something that vibrates, that really creates music, that really creates the mood. So it's very important to have a guitar that works, that doesn't hum or that doesn't have action in which you can't play. But as soon as you level that out, almost every guitar in the mix will sound the same. Now, when you look at cameras, it's not the camera that creates the image, unless, of course, you think about that. And this is what I try to explain. So the guitar really creates the sound. With a camera, your lighting creates your image. Your whole styling creates the image. The storytelling creates the image. The only thing your camera does is you look through it and you press that freaking button and then it stores the image. And that can be 12 megapixels, it can be 60, or it can be 100. Trust me, it doesn't matter which kind of camera you hold, as long as you have a camera that fits your work style. So with me, I'm a very unlucky person because I love lens flares, I love high dynamic range. So for me, I always have to upgrade. That's also why I went to medium format, because it could handle that much better than at that point the Canon 20D or the 5D that I was shooting. I just started shooting the 5D when I switched over to medium. So there's this whole almost cult-like experience from, oh, I have this camera. Oh, that's much better, because why? And I have this saying that everything before but is BS. And I hear a lot of people in my workshop going like, oh, I really love this camera and it's really great, but. And I go like, okay, so you hate the camera. And in most cases, they are covering up their own insecurity. So for example, I have this one student, and I love him, but he's always complaining about his lens. So every lens he buys, if he has a workshop with me and he messes up a shot, it's always, yeah, but I don't like this lens. So why the heck did you buy it? The last workshop you hated your lens, and then I pick up his camera and I take the shot and he goes like, hey, that's weird. And you go like, no, listen, it's not about the lens, it's composition. It's that little bit of, like for example, I don't know if you see video now, but if I look straight at the camera, you can see that there's a little bit of shadow on this side. Now, when I move my head, that shadow becomes really nasty. When I move my head this way, it comes much better. Now, when I look this, I have these reflections in my glasses. That's not the fault of the lens. It's my fault. Because when I move my head down a little bit, the reflections are gone. And those are the things that I think a lot of people focus too much on gear. And they forget that a strobe, sunlight, a lume cube, a nanlight tube, as long as it emits light and your ISO can keep up, you can take great images. So forget about G.A.S. Although it's very funny, of course, to have new gear. It always tickles me a little bit in that creativity part. I love gear, but it's not necessary.
Yeah, the tools can open things up, but at the end of the day, it's not the car, it's the driver. You know?
When I make the greatest shots, when I shoot with old material, so when I start grabbing out my Leica R, I can't afford an M, but I love the Leica R. I'm a huge Leica fan. And I have this R lens, R body, and I have these R lenses on it, which are insane, but they can't stand light. Like an M24 lens, if you have like the modern lenses, they all have coatings. Like they have UV coatings, they have coatings against lens flare, they are sharp from left to center, and it's like, it's perfect, right? It's the same thing when I see an image coming in, it's perfect, but it's boring as can be. Yeah. So when I shoot film, the moment I scan in a film, I always go like, oh, this looks so great. I don't have to push anything. I don't have to use any filters. So I started shooting film more. And at one point you start burning out for the very simple reason. You have to develop it. I did it myself. You have then, of course, all the fumes coming in and you get headaches and whatever. It's just boring. So I was just going like, okay, I've done this for a year. let's try something else. And at that point, there was a company called TechArt. And they released this little converter that you can put on your Sony camera, and all your old lenses, it was a Leica M mount, so a very short flange distance, and all your old manual focusable lenses became autofocus. I was just stunned. My mind was blown. I was going like, okay, I need this thing. And it took, I think, 2 years before I finally got my hands on one. And I put it on my Sony camera, and then I started buying all the converters you could get for, I believe on AliExpress, like 10 euros for Leica M to M42, Leica M to Leica R, Leica M to Minolta, Leica Air. And so I have 6 or 7 of those converters. And I just started going to flea markets, and it's insane. You see these beautiful lenses, and you go up to the guy and go like, hey, what do you want from that Zebra lens? Oh, 5 euros. And you go like, okay, for 5 euros, I want to take it. And they give you the whole bag. So camera, lenses, everything. And you go like, I only want that lens. No, take all the mess. You go
You're
like,
doing me a favor at that point. Yeah, clearing the space.
And I started mounting those lenses on my camera. Now, the weird thing is, and this is why I bring this up about the guitars and everything. When I shoot with my 24-70, I know that every shot will be tech sharp, right? I know that every shot will be perfect. From left to right, there will be no lens flare. Everything is safe. It's like a warm bath where you go in, everything is perfect. Now, when I start using those old lenses, it's very, very flaky. It's almost being in a slasher movie. You never know which one is going to be right. You know which one is going to be good. You never know. But that organic feel, and also the feel of having something really weird on your camera with the zebra stripes from the Auto Takamura lenses, it gives you that same feeling I have when I hold a USA Strat. So I buy a 5 euro lens instead of a 2100 euro lens. I put it on a very expensive 60 megapixel camera with a converter, and I create way more better shots than I can ever do with my Sony lens for one very simple reason. The moment you grab it, it's that magic. It's that feeling of doing something else. And I think when you have listeners now going like, hey, I can't shoot because I don't have the newest gear, just mind this, what I'm now telling you. I'm shooting some of the best and most creative shots with 5 euro lenses. Now, if you go like, hey, Frank, I want a little bit more creativity, but I don't want those old lenses, check out a brand called Lensbaby.
Lensbaby. Oh, fantastic.
They literally, I always make the joke, they create shit lenses that are awesome.
Yeah.
So those lenses are, and that's the cool thing that Lensbaby does. They create lenses exactly the same that I love them, like in the old days where the sights, if you shot on 2.8, the sights are a little bit funky. There's a little bit of vignetting in that lens. It's not 100% sharp, but it's also not unsharp. So it's very weird combination of it's tech sharp, but it's not. It's weird. And then when you buy, for example, the Composer, which you can also shift.
I have that one. Love it.
It's so awesome. And the thing is, a lot of people complain about like, hey, when you use older lenses or cheap lenses, you always have this vignetting on the sides. And I go like, you know what the first thing is that I add in Lightroom? In every single image is a little bit of vignetting. So for me, when I have a lens that actually does it, saves me one step in my workflow. And it's just, you know, that organic feel. It's so much better than that whole digital, which looks perfect. And there's a place and time for that. But when I'm working creatively, I just love using those old lenses and the Lensbaby gear. So yeah, that's something really, when you are like a lot of people struggling with, hey, what should I buy next? What is the best camera? Creating is in your mind, and the camera is just the hammer and the nail to put the painting on the wall. Nobody cares about the hammer and the nail. They only focus on the painting, and that's what you create.
Precisely. And sometimes you can use a special hammer and a special nail for a special result, but it's all about what you're seeing in there and trying to get out there.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. You know, I covered them just on my live show I do every Sunday, but I'm not going to plug that during a Frank Doorhof interview. But I talked about Jeff Bridges. Did you know he's a very accomplished photographer? He uses a wide lux camera, and they're phenomenal. He does backstages of every movie he's on, and they're killer. Have you come across his work?
No, not yet, but I read something about it, but I'm definitely going to check it out now.
You really should. Highly, highly recommend it. And he comes to mind especially not just for the results he gets with which, you know, embrace those imperfections, but his overall philosophy on photography is a lack of preciousness. There's no pretension. There's just get the mood, get the feeling, always with the wide lux. That's what matters.
I I had to do a seminar a while ago for a school. It was higher education, and I wanted to make an impact. And it was, with students, when somebody comes to my shows or the workshops, they are all there for me, or at least they're not for me, but the material that I teach, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have motivated students. Teaching for a school where you are a program, it's very difficult because some people are very motivated. They go like, "Hey, that's Frank, and I love photography." But 90% of the people in that room will go like, "Oh, that's 50 minutes. Oh no, it's 2 blocks. It's 100. Oh my God, I want to go home. I want to play Pokemon or whatever." So you have a very unmotivated public. And I thought like, okay, how can I make an impact that really triggers them to think differently about imaging? So I started out, I said, okay, let's go back in time. Let's go back in the time machine. So we are now in the Stone Age. So what is the first thing I do? Okay, I'm going to kill a dinosaur. Now I'm home. My wife is cooking the dinosaur. There's no TV. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my crayon and I'm going to paint on the wall that me alone killed the dinosaur. And this is actually the first comic book ever, which was a superhero, because I didn't kill the dinosaur myself. I did it with 600 other people or 60 people or whatever. But of course, in the drawing, I am the one killing the dinosaur. Now, fast forward to the Egyptians. All the gods, all the pyramids, they were all in hieroglyphs or they were all in images. So we have a lot of images there telling stories, right? Yeah, yeah. Okay, now fast forward to the Greek. All the mythology, all in paintings, right? Yes. Okay, fast forward to the Golden Age, all the paintings. They were all perfect, right? I said, fast forward. Now, we are in 2000. At that point, it was 2018, let's say 2021. I said, okay, now let's put everything that we ever created in the whole world, which has the label art or expression, into one box. Let's say it's a shoebox. So in this shoebox, filled up to the brim, is all the art and everything we as humanity ever created in one shoebox from 0 to 2020. Now let's compare that to what's now happening online in 1 hour. You need a gazillion of those boxes to actually fit what is now going on in the internet in 1 hour. So how the hell can you ever create real art when we are used to this? So when we look back at the old age, just name some artists: Van Gogh, Rembrandt, Caravaggio. Those were all painters that everybody knows. When you look at the 90s when you look at the 2000s, the Kardashians, selfies, duck faces, that's not art. So as soon as people start to see art again as art, this is where photography comes in. And I ended up the small introduction actually with, we as photographers freeze unique moments in time that come never back again. So this is your chance. This is also why we do Hell Portrait, for example, in the Netherlands. And I don't know if you know what Hell Portrait is, but every year volunteers all over the world open up their studio. I believe it's the second Saturday of December. And everybody that doesn't have any money can get images for free.
We do that in Belgium too, yes.
We do it for the Netherlands. And the reason we started this project, one, of course, because I know Jeremy very well, Jeremy Coward. And the other reason is, and this is a little bit of a sad story maybe, my grandmother, we have a very, very tight family connection. And at one point, my grandmother wasn't doing well, and she went to a nurse. After a hospitalization, she went to a nursing home. And for a year, we thought every time we're going to get a call, and she died, right? And so there was a very stressful period for us. Now, as soon as she went to the nursing home, we were actually going like, we can probably just close up this chapter, and she will probably be with us for another 10 years. And then on Mother's Day, we actually went to visit my grandma. And normally I have this, at that point, of course, a big DSLR camera with me with a lot of megapixels. But I just got in this Canon GX10, a very, very small camera, crappy image quality. But for that time, it was okay for snapshots. And the only thing I brought was that Canon GX. And I took some images of my grandma. I didn't take any notice, actually. So there's something sticking out of her head from the back, but they're just playing with it. The next day, we got a call that she died. At that point, it was such an impact for me. And I think that scarred me for my life, to be honest, that those unique moments in time that never come back again. The only images I get are from that crappy GX10, noisy as can be, some stuff sticking out of her head. I had to do some Photoshop on it to make it actually usable. And I was thinking, like, if I brought my main camera that day, I would have had the perfect images of my grandma. And I think this is something that a lot of people that do workshops and that do photography don't realize enough. Every time you press that shutter, you are freezing a unique moment in time. So when you photograph a model, don't just shoot 10,000 images. Try to nail that one image. Not to be negative, you never know what's going to happen after, because that's weird. But if you take a little bit more time and you realize what you're doing with your photography, I'm sure that when you think a little bit more about it, your images will get better. So we started a whole program in the workshop called Polaroid, where I actually told my students to get a Polaroid camera on eBay. And they were only allowed for 1 week to shoot 10 images with the Polaroid, and they couldn't touch the camera. Unless, of course, they had a job or they had a shoot. Of course, then you can shoot your camera, but no personal shots. So only work, no personal shots. Everything you want to do personal, you had to be with the Polaroid.
Very smart.
Was everybody that came back to the workshop said, you know what, Frank, normally a friend of mine would visit and I would say, oh, I'll take a shot, boom. And now because I have that Polaroid and every time I press, it's like €2, I go like, oh yeah, don't sit there. Let's go outside where the light is better. No, there's a tree over there. He said, dude, I've taken 15 minutes to take a shot of my friend, which I normally would do in 1 second. I said, but did you like the shot better? He said, Frank, you opened up my eyes. From now on, even with the DSLR, I'm not going to take a shot anymore. I'm first going to take a look. No, I don't like it. Go somewhere else. He said, because the improvements are huge. And that is the problem nowadays. You are so fit into just press the shutter button and everything will be okay, or we'll fix it in Photoshop, that you end up with mediocre images. And a very simple example is look at modern day advertising. When is the last time you really got excited about a photo shoot in a magazine? It's probably a long time ago. Now open up any magazine from the 70s. Look at the car commercials. Look at the Marlboro Man. Everybody wanted to be the Marlboro Man, right? You don't want to smoke, but the Marlboro Man, oh my, that was him. That was the real man. Did you ever see him with a Marlboro pack? Probably not. He was smoking, but that could be any brand, right? But it was that whole atmosphere around it, that whole feeling. But at that time, they also had a lot of money, of course, for the photographers. Nowadays, when you look at magazines and you see, over here, we have a magazine years ago that was called the Veronica, and it was the TV Guide. And they did an interview with 10 famous people in the Netherlands in a yoga studio. You could literally see on which day which photos were taken because they were all shot against gray seamless and they were all spread out over 2 pages. You could literally see that one was a little bit purple, the next one was a little bit yellow. Oh, there's another one purple. Oh, those were shot probably on the same day. And that means that even the professional photographer didn't use any color balance tool, so like a color checker or whatever. The editor didn't see it. And finally, also the main responsible person, the art director, didn't see it either. And now it's in the shops. And nowadays, a lot of people complain that you can't earn any money with photography anymore. And they are absolutely right. But if you want to change your chances just a little bit to create a little bit more chance for yourself to create something and earn money, just learn the basic rules of photography. Learn how to expose, learn how to get your colors correct, and learn how to have a calibrated workflow. So a workflow that always delivers exactly the same results. After that, you can be creative. But if you can deliver something to your client that is constant, that is the same thing over and over again. So when I shoot an artist, for example, for clothing, it's against the gray back seamless. And it happens a lot that they call me up like, hey, Frank, we forgot one suit. Can you do it again? Sure, come next week. And they get exactly the same image. So they can show it in one series. You know how many photographers can't do that? It's insane. Use a light meter, use a color checker, and you're done.
Well, that falls into the purview of technical and, I suppose, to an extent, creative photography, but it's also the huge pillar that a lot of commercial or wannabe commercial photographers forget, which is the business end of photography. You're being consistent. They're seeing obviously white balance differences in the example you give, but they're also, but more importantly, they're seeing like this has the same mood, same feeling, everything else.
Yep.
And also, I guess, I mean, if you want to dig into it too, feel free. No need, but no obligation rather. But the business end of even doing your billing consistently right and correct.
I think with billing, I wrote a book called Mastering the Model Shoot. And
Yep.
one of the things that actually, I believe it's in that book, is actually how you should invoice your client. And believe it or not, we invoice very, very weirdly. We invoice everything. And it's weird because they don't pay for it. So let me explain. We got a customer and he wanted me to do a photo shoot in 3 stores in the Netherlands. And this is a high-end customer, so I'm not going to reveal the name, but let me say if you are in America, it's like a Walmart. So this is a really, really high-end customer. So I had to go to 3 stores. I had to bring my own models who would act as clients, and I had to take images in those 3 stores. So I gave him an offer. I'm not going to say what. And they said, no, Frank, we're not going to do that. We have a budget of 150 euros per store. I said, excuse me, 150 euros per store? I have to drive there. And the furthest one is almost an hour and a half from me. I have to bring at least 3 models to every location. I have to do the photo shoot. I have to do the retouching and deliver it. And then I have 150 euros per store. How the heck do you calculate that? And they said, well, if we go on stock market, we can buy an image for 100 euros. So my boss said, well, if it can be done for 150, we can do that. At that point, it became clear to me they don't have a clue about what's going on. So after that, we started talking with some regular clients of us, and I gave him 2 invoices. One invoice only stated a photo shoot, 150 euros. The other invoice stated a photo shoot, 75 euros. Small materials, 10 euros. Storage, 5 euros. Retouching, 1 hour, this many euros. And I calculated everything down and I gave him the invoice 200 euros. So they have one invoice for exactly the same for 150, one for exactly the same for 200. And I told him, which invoice? You only have to pay the 150, so don't worry. But which invoice do you like the best? And he said, Frank, if you gave me the invoice for 200, I would probably call you up. Are you sure you can do this all for 200? And that's the moment that it clicked. People don't have a clue what's going on with photographers. And that gets me a little bit angry sometimes when I see those model days. You know, you have those also in Belgium, of course, and you have them everywhere. You have 2 or 3, or maybe 30 or 40 models. You have 30 or 40 makeup artists, and they are in one area, like, for example, a beach, and photographers can shoot the models. Don't you find it weird and worrying that always the photographers pay for that day? Wait a minute. So we drive there, we pay to shoot the models. We have for thousands of euros gear. We have to retouch all the images. Then the models start complaining, oh, can you do my skin a little bit better? Okay, so we retouch again. Then the model starts complaining, do you have more images of that? And we are the ones that are paying for those days. And then the answer back is, yeah, but the makeup artist uses a lot of material. 100% true. But that material is used for maybe 30 photographers and 1 model. And the models, they spend a lot of money on clothing. I go like, I know that a lot of models just order online and send it back after the photo shoot, which I think is wrong. So why should the photographer pay for everything? And this is when I started doing really very intense, like every seminar we teach, every invoice we send out, it's like a long list of everything that we use. And ever since, we never got actually a complaint from a customer like, hey, you're too expensive, or hey, can you give me a discount? They read it and they go like, I'm not going to even ask for a discount. So this is something I think invoicing is very important. But I want to go back one step, if you allow me, for the technical part. I told you already that I started teaching also with guitar lessons. Yeah. And one thing that I now, actually in the new book, Shooting on Every Location, it's only in Dutch, and Week is now translating it. I start out with a very, very simple example, and I hope that everybody that listens now will actually start using this. When you look at music and you look at what you have to learn, it's mind-boggling, right? You have to learn to read notes. You have to learn all the scales. Then as soon as you know all the scales, you know minor and major. That's not all. There are actually 7 modes, like Ionian, Dorian, Mixolydian, free. There are a lot of modes, 7 modes. They're called the church mode. Then you have harmonic minor, so there's also dropped. And it's just mind-boggling. So when I started teaching guitar, I had this very simple thing. I had this student coming in and he said, hey, Frank, I love Metallica. I want to play Metallica. So what's Metallica? I said, okay, that's Dorian or Mixolydian. Okay, I wanted those 2 scales. I said, no, learn the major scale. No, I want to Dorian and Mixolydian. And, very simple. They pay me per hour. So, okay, cool. This is the Mixolydian scale. Play it over the whole neck. And they go, okay, thank you. And what is Dorian? We'll do that next week. So I took about 2 months to teach that student Dorian and Mixolydian. He didn't know anything else, Dorian and Mixolydian. So he came in, Dream Theater. That's Locrian. Okay, I'm going to teach you the Locrian scale. Now, we also had students that asked me like, hey, Frank, why do I need to learn the major scale over the whole neck? And then I told them a very simple thing. If you know the major scale over the whole neck, you know exactly where all the notes are, right? Yes, okay. I said, okay, listen to this. If you play the major scale and you start on the C note, you have something called Ionian. That's the major scale. But if you start exactly that same scale, you can keep all the patterns, but you start that scale on the A note, you have A minor. And then they looked at me and said, Frank, is that really at exactly the same location? I said, dude, it's exactly the same. The only thing is, instead of playing C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, you start playing A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Okay, so it's exactly the same. Yes, I said the fun part is, if you start on the D, you have Dorian. If you start on the E and on the F and on the G, you have all the other modes. And then he looked at me and said, so Frank, if I want to play Dream Theater, if I want to play Metallica, if I want to play Queen, I only have to learn 1 scale. Yep, you only have to learn 1 scale and then start on different notes. That student learned a major scale in 1 week over the whole neck. And after that, he just knew, okay, if something is in Dorian, okay, I just have to remember the position of the major scale. And on guitar, it's very easy. You just shift up and down if you need other keys. And then he said, okay, now I'm not going to start with this finger, but I'm going to start with that finger. And I'm also going to land on that finger. And he could literally, and I can do the same thing, I can play in any mode, any key within 2 weeks. While the other student had to learn first 7 scales in all the positions on the neck. That's insane. And then he had to learn all the dropped ones. While the other student, he said, okay, now I want to learn a harmonic minor. I said, okay, the only thing you have to remember is drop 1 of the notes down. It's that easy. Drop 1 of the notes down. Okay, done. So by learning photography, I see that a lot of people start here at the top level. They want to learn the lighting with 3 strobes. Don't. The first thing you have to do is go outside with your camera, look at the sun. It's the most beautiful light source in the world. Start shooting birds, start shooting sports, start shooting everything, and start to realize what the sun does, what shadows do. And don't be afraid of shadows. Don't only shoot with a big softbox in the cloud. Shoot with bright sunlight and love those shadows. Now go in the studio and you realize that you can literally just move your sun around. That will give you so much more than just, and I did the same thing, buying a book with lighting setups. Because they always suck. You see a great image, you see the lighting setup, you create exactly the same, and it sucks. It doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Because you nailed the lighting, but you forgot about expression of the model, the styling of the model, the way that you are handling your camera. Because a lighting diagram doesn't show you if you lean down and shoot up, or if you're standing up on a ladder and aiming down, which creates totally different images. So
emotional responses, would you say, is could be another way of saying that?
Yeah, correct. So learn the basics, and in my opinion, that's learning how to expose correctly, right? And at that point, start learning a light meter and a color checker. And the reason is very simple. I love to work with presets. Like, for example, in Lightroom, I have all these presets that give my images color. And when I use a color checker and a light meter, my images are always the same. The base is always the same. So when I say, okay, I want 10% more red, multiply that with a little bit of the blue channel, multiply that with this, there's a lot of multiplication there and a lot of adding. Now, if all the images are exactly the same to start with, it will always look the same. Even if I shot it outside or on the tungsten or on the fluorescence, it looks exactly the same. Now, when I do it by eye and I'm 10% off, you can hardly see it, But if you calculate and you multiply and you take different color channels that you copy, that little mistake of 10% can be 100% and it looks like crap. So by using a color checker and a light meter, you always have that base correct, and you don't have to work around with adjusting color. Now, if you love that, be my guest. Of course, it's cool to just tinker around. I do it myself too.
Whatever works, sure.
For a client, and you want to have that same look over and over again, start using the base correct, like the same thing, learn the major scale. And in all honesty, I never play major. I always play minor or modes, but I know my major scale over the whole neck. So by learning photography with a color checker and a light meter, you have that solid base. And from that solid base, you can start thinking about creativity. And as long as you don't have to think about your camera anymore and your settings, all that space there isn't taking up with thinking about your camera anymore. It's taking up with creativity. So that camera becomes just a tool, like a nail and a hammer. I hope I don't go too far, but...
No, man, we can talk for hours too. That's part of the open format. It's all good if it's good by you.
Okay, awesome.
Hey, cool.
Sometimes ramble a little bit with that kind of stuff.
No, that's part of why I go for open format, especially photographers. We like to really get into it, don't we?
Of course.
Easy. Well, I could pick on 50 things with that and 20 more things from what we've talked about already. I guess, no, thank you. I guess just to pick up on the last stuff, I mean, you're educating your clients through the billing and whatever else, and you're primarily educating photographers. And it's got to be said, and I think one of the major reasons you're doing so well for yourself, and rightfully so, you're a bit of an infinite well of knowledge on photography on so many respects.
Thank you.
Please, how do you, and I guess this is a selfish question because I'm more and more helping and educating people in my own way through photography. How do you funnel that into people's brains properly in a bit of an abstract question way?
Ooh,
how do you make sense of it all, both for yourself and for them?
I think it's, and that's also because I already had my background in teaching guitar. I know that sometimes, and that's very hard for me because I'm not hardwired that way, but sometimes you also have to think about, if you don't want to learn, just give me your money. And that sounds really weird coming from me, and maybe it will shock some people, but in the end, I have to feed my family. And I'm the kind of person that will give you everything. I won't hold anything back. If you buy one of our, let me put it this way. If you go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Frank Doorhof, we have this show called Digital Classroom, which is a 2-hour live stream every month from our studio. I think I show you more than most instructional videos. This hurts us a little bit because we also have instructional videos. What people don't realize is those videos go way more in depth and they're really blazingly fast. So 1 hour digital classroom is like 15 minutes on an instructional video because it goes way faster. At one point, I did realize, however, that whoever you are, you can never take a Frank Doorhof shot. And I can never take an Andy McSweeney shot. And I can never take a Scott Kelby shot because it's not mathematics. We are photographers. We are creators. Every single second you do something else. So if I give you my light setup, I give you my camera, I say, sit here, Andy, aim at the model and shoot it. You still will never get a Frank Doorhof shot. I won't say it's better or worse. So I'm not afraid to teach somebody everything I know. At that point, you also have a problem because I love teaching and we teach twice a week. It means that I'm not teaching once a year. So when you teach once a year, you have a very focused audience group, and those people are really coming for you, probably paying a shitload of money. My workshops are, I believe, 175 euros for a full day in 5-people group.
That's very reasonable.
It's very reasonable. Scott always tells me I'm crazy with those prices, but hey, why not? And the thing is, because we have a low price point and I love teaching, we also get a lot of people in there that, let's just be totally honest, they only want to see the light setups. And as soon as I start talking about light meters, they go, Frank, we don't need a light meter. At first, I think a few years ago, I very much tried to convince them to use a light meter, which sometimes ended up by losing students because they go like, Frank only wants me to buy a light meter. I just stopped with it. I will try it twice. And after that, I will just go, you know what? The people that do listen to me, those people I will lose after 5 workshops. I never lose them because they keep coming back because I keep improving myself. But normally, let's say if you stop at your own level, you will lose those people in 5 workshops, because at that point you gave them enough stuff to work it out themselves.
Yeah.
So at one point I just started to realize, all those guys that only want to learn light setups, I can keep them here for 10 years. Because every time they come in, I will do something else. Because I never, and that's the cool thing, I never have a fixed light setup. So sometimes they come in like, hey Frank, this portrait, you light it differently the last time. I said, yep, correct. Yeah, but why? Because this is a blonde-haired model and not a black-haired model. Okay, so what's the difference? Well, with blonde hair, I put my accents a little bit lower. And you see them writing it down like, with blonde hair model, put accent lights down. And I go like, dude, you probably have a book like this big, like a TV guy, like a telephone.
A phone book, yeah.
Well, if you just remember the main light, that's your key light, that you meter, and you hold your light meter in front of the area you want correctly lit. So in the studio, that mostly means that you aim towards your light source, but it's not true. You hold it in front of the area you want correctly lit, because it's an incident meter, right? And after that, you just look at your image and you go like, okay, this is a blonde-haired model, so we need a little bit less accent light. And if you understand why, and it's so simple, when I tell you like, yeah, you need less light because blonde hair actually blows out easier. So why write down dark-haired model minus 2 steps? Just understand that if you light somebody with black hair, you need a little bit more light than if you light something with white hair. And at one point you see that you have 2 kinds of students. One student that will remember it immediately and go like, yeah, good tip. You have the kind of student that goes like, yeah, that's obvious. Those are the great ones. And you have the ones that go like, one moment, Frank, you went too fast. So with black hair, minus 2. With white hair, 0. And what do you do with brown hair? I say, oh, minus 1. And those, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes people just understand the basics, and sometimes you really have to give them like a little bit of sheet paper with, okay, use this light setup. And mostly I will give those students like 5 or 6 lighting setups. I let them take pictures of the lighting setups. And I just know that they will always use those 5 light setups. Now, the weird thing is, some of those are really, really successful photographers for one very simple reason. They're not dumb. They know exactly how that lighting setup works. So they have 5 lighting setups. So when a client comes in, they just show the portfolio. You have 5 choices. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Which one do you like? I love that one. And because they always use the same light setups, dude, they really know how to light that light setup. They light the crap out of that setup. So you get great images. While I'm more like, okay, so I have this person and I start talking with them and I go like, okay, what's your character? Okay, so what do you expect from the images? What do you want? Do you want to be a CEO, or do you want to be the concierge? Or are you somebody that fills the supermarket area? Or do you want to be the main guy? Or it has to be very important, because how you pose a model, which backdrop you use, how you light a model, it can literally be the difference. Peter Hurley once told me, it's the difference between the red carpet or working at McDonald's. And you can have exactly the same person. If I shoot somebody wrong, I will literally cost him his job, because he goes to an interview, they look at the image and go like, he looks creepy. I don't want that guy in front of the children's daycare. Or if I make an image that makes him look really nice and nice backdrop, they go like, oh, that's such a nice guy. Let's interview him. Yeah. And after that, of course, he has to do it himself. But as an entrepreneur myself, I know that you get a lot of letters in from people that want to work for you. Let's say we have one opening, you get 40 letters. I can't help it. The first thing I do is look at the picture and I go like, no. And I don't look at skin color, because I don't see any color. Everybody's equal. So we don't look at that, but we look at how somebody is on the picture. And the cool thing is, this really works. My son was, I believe, 20, and he wanted to get a job at the local market, the do-it-yourself market.
Yeah.
So he went in and he got denied. Send in your resume. So he sent in his resume and he never heard anything back. So he called up. He said, hey, why didn't you call me back? Well, we had a lot of people coming in, and sorry, you didn't fit the bill. I didn't agree, because he's a very smart kid and he works really, really well. So I said, you know what, come to the studio, I will make a shot for you. So what kind of job do you want? Well, I just want to start out somewhere. Okay. So put your arms like this. So a nice closed up position, but put your hand here and just look straight at the camera. And now just a hint of a smile. So I took that shot. The first thing He sent it in his resume. He got the job. And the reason behind it was very simple. Yeah, your picture really stood out. Everybody else took pictures with their cell phones. He got a professional photo shoot from a pretty good photographer. And because I knew where he was going for, I literally posed him that way. So he had to have client interaction. So put your arms like this, but open up one hand. Gives you a little bit more of an, it's closed, like this is more for a CEO. If you don't show your hands, it's very, very closed. It's like power. But if you open up that hand a little bit more here, it gives it a little bit more friendliness and openness. So really great for the customers. And a hint of a smile, not that toothpaste smile because that's fake. Just a little bit of a hint of a smile. Let him show your character because he's a cool kid. And he got the job. I was just going like, you see the picture really makes. So yeah, that's as a photographer sometimes forgotten. And that's the part which you can never learn the guy that works with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lighting setups. But you can teach the guy that actually knows how to light something and doesn't think about lighting anymore, but only thinks about getting that character out. So it's just where you focus your gray mass on. You only have 100% that you can focus on. If you have to focus on lighting, it means that you lose maybe 40% of that knowledge up there or that free space. So just forget about lighting, forget about your camera, know how it works, and you can focus 100% on shooting your subject. And that's way better for your images, trust me.
Absolutely agree. That's the other part of photography I think people sometimes forget, especially in portraiture in particular, the psychological impact of an image. I mean, already, well, I don't think we need examples. You just summed it up so beautifully. But I guess to actually pull on Peter Hurley, who I think is a really great, especially with the white and the way he pulls out moods and emotions. I'm not sure if I've got the number right, but what is it? 99% of a portrait is psychological?
Yeah. And I agree 100%. He took a shot of me that I used for years. I hate myself in front of the camera. That's why
we all do.
My new avatar is actually pretty much my character. It's a Batman shirt, which I open up. Like I open up my shirt and you see the Batman shirt underneath. And it's you know how many years it took me to actually have the guts to do that? Like I'm very, some people will call it humble. I would just go down to earth. I'm nothing special. I'm just a teacher who can shoot a pretty image. That's it. And the thing is that I always took my images very, very low key, almost to a point that it was boring. When you know me as a person, I'm very bubbly. I'm very open. I'm very enthusiastic. But if you looked at my image, you go like, that's one boring Dutch guy. And that's the image that I loved. And then when I came up to Peter, I was just visiting him. And he said, oh, man, you have to be in front of my camera. I was going like, no, dude. And he was going like, yeah, I want to take your headshot. I was going, okay, Peter Hurley headshot. Why not? So I was in front of his camera. And the cool thing is with Peter, and I learned that from him, actually, he doesn't coach you a lot. He just throws some words at you. And you go like, that doesn't make any sense at all. Like, okay, so do that thing with your eyebrows that you did before, but not a little bit more. And you go like, what? But somehow, because you try to do it, because you're so focused on his voice, you don't actually hear what he's saying, but you are trying to look at, okay, what does he mean by, okay, maybe he means this. And he just keeps shooting. And at the end, I went through his film roll or his roll on his computer. And it was stunning. It was like, oh, I like this one. Oh, I like that one. That one is even better. Oh my God, I love that one. That one is odd. That's me. And normally when I go through it, don't like that one, don't like that one, don't like that. Oh, that's horrible. No. Okay, that's acceptable. Mm-hmm. And I think as soon as I can't use the Peter Hurley headshot anymore, because it's now like, I think 5 or 6 years old, I was just going like, okay, I want something else. And I tried a few things like holding my camera. And I just always went back to, that's so boring. It's not Frank. It's not that Peter Hurley shot. And then a week just told me like, hey, Frank, just forget about anything. Just do what you love. And I said, okay, I always love Batman. The Killing Joke, of course, is a great cover. I had a t-shirt with the Killing Joke, with the Joker holding the camera. Yeah, and I was going, okay, let's do that. And I was standing in front of the camera and I didn't like the shot. And at one point I said, you know what? I'm Batman. And I just pulled open my shirt, put my chest forward, showed it, and just looked up. She took the shot. I looked at her and said like, oh my God, I don't know if I have the guts to do this. And Annie just looked at me and said, this is you. Use this. Everybody that sees the shot loves it. And I think this is also a part of the photographer. Sometimes you really have to push your client, because the shot you see online now, which is my headshot, which I use a lot, was actually a shot that I was afraid to use because it was too much, too open. I want to be humble. I want to be down to earth. And this is really a shot that goes like, hey, I'm here. And you know, the fun part is it really helps because we get a lot more inquiries for stages, for shows, which normally they didn't. And that one headshot, just a little bit more open. And man, that's something I really learned from Peter Hurley. And Peter Hurley is one example. He has 2 lighting setups or maybe 3. And he doesn't focus on it anymore because it's there. The only thing he has to do is focus on getting that personality over. And when you ask Peter, like, do you know anything about theory, about lighting? He just looked at me and said, no, I will call you. So that's the fun. And that's, of course, a joke. Peter knows a lot about how he works. But Peter is 99% psychologically very, very strong. And I think without any doubt, one of the best headshot photographers in the world. But mostly because he knows he has to clean his mind to just focus on getting that character. And not think about lighting too much. Lighting is okay. You know, lighting is important. But that character, think about movies. And everybody that's now listening, did you ever watch a movie in 4K, in Dolby Atmos, and you were bored out of your mind after 5 minutes? Yes. Okay. Did you ever watch a movie that was 1080p in PCM 2.0, but you just kept watching because it was such an awesome movie? That's the difference between photography with doing a lot of flashy lighting, using gels, using lens flash, which I do, using smoke, but forgetting about the story. You get a beautiful image which falls down because there's nothing there. It's boring. Try to pull everything down, take your phone, go outside, dress up a model, really, really nice and really cool, take a shot, and you will see that instant gratification. And then you look and go like, hey, I didn't use any strobes. I used my phone. What the hell's going on? You start to think about the story and not about the lighting. The lighting isn't important. Now, as soon as you get the story right, now the lighting becomes very important because now you have to grow with your lighting. But that story has to be main part, really. And this is where Peter excels in getting that headshot. He really knows what he's doing. If you don't know Peter Hurley, check him out. He's absolutely awesome.
Got to agree. I do portrait work on the commercial set, and he's been a huge influence on that, especially the psychology, like you talk about. Yeah. It's interesting too. I've noticed a continuous thread. Maybe it's just you Kelbyone folk, but between you, Peter Hurley, and Joe McNally, also very, very accomplished with flash photography. You guys are always cutting down the number of flashes you use. You really go for the simplicity in the technical and results side of things, don't you?
I think that's a wrong conclusion. A lot of people actually started calling me the one-strobe wizard, and I said, please don't. Very simple. Whatever name you want to call me, Mr. Light Meter or whatever, I'm fine with that, but not one strobe. And he said, but most of your images are shot with one strobe. I said, you don't look right. I said, of course, I shoot a lot of images with one strobe, but because they don't need more. And actually, I don't know if Rick said it, but he stole one of my my things. I always say, if you think you need 2 strobes, try it with 1. If you need 3 strobes, try it with 1. As soon as you think you need 4 strobes, try it with 1.
He gave you credit during our interview, so don't worry, he didn't steal it too hard. He mentioned that, yeah.
And it's 100% true. Start with 1 light. And I think also the difference between a lot of photographers and, for example, the viewer doesn't really care about lighting. The viewer doesn't really care about, or the listener doesn't really care about if you play through a tube amp or a transistor amp, or if you play a Gibson or a Fender. They don't even know the difference. They see a guitar with 4 strings and they call it an electric guitar. No, that's a bass, dummy. No, it's a guitar. Okay, it's a guitar. So they don't care. So why do we spend so much time perfecting our light, which the client doesn't even see because the client doesn't understand lighting? The client only understands, I want to sell my product. And if I want to sell my product, I have to have a character there. So try to get the character out first. And then all the lighting stuff, all the smoke, that's secondary. And I think guys like Joe McNally especially, oh man, Joe is awesome. If you see what he does in a simple like laundromat, and he creates a whole detective story. But there you go, the detective story. Every image you see from McNally, and that drives me nuts sometimes, I hate Joe, is every story has that perfect narrative. That perfect, every time you see a Joe McNally image, You just know it's Joe McNally because it's not a pretty girl or a pretty guy. No, it tells a story. And the guy, he's just there. He's just the clothing hanger for the story. And I think that's awesome. And there's a series on Netflix. And now I hope I don't pronounce his name wrong. Patel. Anyway, there's this photographer, and now I'm really ashamed because I forgot his name. But he sits down with his clients, and he shot all the greats in the world, and he only has like 2 or 3 backdrops. And he just sits down with the client and go like, "Hey, how's your son?" "Oh, I have a son." Yeah, of course." "Oh, he's doing great. Yeah, I heard he just graduated from school, right?" And you see the sitter going from tense to totally relaxed. "Yeah, correct. Yeah, he just passed his exam." You see his hands going differently. You see the guy not even picking up his camera yet. And he goes like, "And how's your wife? Brenda, right?" Yeah, Brenda's doing fine. Yeah, and her sister recently got into a new business. Yeah. And you see him relaxing even more. And you see the photographer constantly looking. And at one point, he just grabs his camera, shut, puts his camera down. He talks for another 2 minutes. And the sitter actually goes like, "Okay, I'm ready. Can we take a picture?" "I already took the picture." And he shot Obama. He shot like a very famous general from the American army. And when you look at those images, you go like, "Oh, that's that person." You can literally just see that he has a wife, that he has a son that just passed. It's somehow translated in that image. And you see so many photographers that are so busy on the set with just their own drama. There was this show called, oh, now I forgot. It's this duo. It's a guy and a girl shooting images. Oh, I'm really bad with this. Anyway, it's a really great show, but you see that it's all about the drama on the set. Indrani is the name of the female, and anyway, you find it online. And you see that it's all about the drama, and sometimes they even argue with the team and each other while the artist is standing there and going like, "Okay, I'm leaving the set." And this is the 2 things that are totally different. When you look at Joe McNally, it's all about story, but Joe really talks to the models. He really makes them feel at ease. When you look at Peter Hurley, it's all about the character. He doesn't really care about lighting. It has to be okay, right? The character is okay. And then when you look at that show, and those guys are paid millions, it's all about the drama around it. And it's such a shame because they are talented photographers, but because they only are like, "Okay, I want my lighting to be like this. I want to use that Fresnel because that was 30,000 euros. And they forget about the artist that's in front of it. And I think that's the main thing about photography. It's always about the story you want to tell. Sometimes it's the character, but sometimes it's also the story that you want to tell. And the character is just something that fits.
I couldn't agree more. It's
Double Exposure was the show.
Double Exposure.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to check that out.
And oh my, now I have to find it. Which was the photographer's name? Let me see. Double Exposure.
Have a poke. You're dropping such great talk that I need a second to collect myself, sir. And I can back you up on the humility to the listeners, man. Like I say, I don't over-research when I'm going to chat to people, but Mr. Frank Doorhof is not full of himself, and it's pretty clear. And the Belgians always joke about how Netherlanders can be a little bit ego-filled. So if that were true, then you're doing doubly well, mate.
So very much. Okay, I can't find it that fast, but I will email you that very soon.
And I'll put that in the description just so people can do the research fully.
For what the show was called, but I believe it was Double Exposure. I know the girl is called Indrani because the thing is I really liked her photography, and he's the big man of the show, and his photos are okay, but she was awesome. So when you look at the show, he's often shooting with the big strobes and everything, and she's just walking around using daylight because he gets the great shot. So yeah, it's a really nice show. They now broke up, I believe, but yeah, if you want to see how don't shoot and don't act to clients, that's the show to watch. Everything you do the opposite.
Yeah. How do you feel when you see that stuff, man? I mean, whether it's on a TV show or in real world, you must be seeing photographers letting their ego take over or not be all that, but acting like they're all that.
I
No
hate
names, please. We're not here to dump on anyone, but
no, I hate that behavior. I always tell people, like, sometimes they come up to me and they say, "Hey, you wrote Mastering the Model Shoot, which is my Bible for photography. It's the best book ever written." And I always go like, "Okay, thank you." And I love your instructional videos, and I want to take a selfie with you, and I want your autograph. And I do it because I know that people working up the courage to ask it, and I like it. Let's be honest. You like to be tickled. You like to hear that you're doing fine.
you're being recognized for your work.
We
Absolutely.
recognize what you do, but in
Yeah.
the end, let's be totally honest. I'm just a teacher and I'm just a photographer. Now, if you are like a Brian May or a Freddie Mercury, that's when you are famous because you really create something that's unique in the world. I create nice images, but what's the difference between me and a math teacher? There's no difference. We're both teachers, only he does math and I do math in calculus, right? No,
Mathematics, yeah. Not meth. No.
I,
Well,
I
maybe he does meth, but
business,
that's
for
his own
example.
business.
We're just teachers, and I think you already said the Kelby crew. They asked
Don't
me
leave me
a
alone.
few years ago if I wanted to join, and I actually said no. Because I felt I didn't belong there because you have Joe McNally, you have Jay Mizell, Rick Salmon, Scott Kelby, and I'm just Frank. In the end, I did it, and I'm very glad I did, and I do feel at home with those guys. The thing is, however, and I think that's the main thing, we do a lot of trade shows. Every time when we do trade shows and there are Kelby speakers, you find that we always flock together at one point. We are really friends and it really feels like family. So I really miss them a lot now with the whole pandemic going on.
I imagine.
And I find that, for example, with Joe, he was sitting in my class during a Mexico. We had a workshop and he was sitting in my class. And I don't mind if people ask Joe a question. And at one point, you can also say that I wouldn't even mind if he would co-teach with me because he was sitting in the back, right? And it was about light meters. And somebody said to Joe, "Hey, Joe, I never see you using a light meter. Do you have one?" He just stood up. He took it straight out of his pocket and said, "Yeah, I always carry one."
Of course.
And a lot of photographers will find that offensive because it's my workshop. And I think that's why I was very hesitant to join something that is so established because I'm the opposite. I'm always like, I don't like shows. I like to be straight to the point. I don't like to give people like something that can be done in one step. Some people teach it in 10 steps because it looks more interesting. I would just give him one step, why not? You can never take an image that I take, right? We are creators.
For sure.
And I think that when you look at the guys that Kelby surrounds around him, are all exactly the same that I am. We love to chat about photography. And if Joe asks me something or I ask Joe something, I always get a dead honest answer. It's not like, "Oh, I'm not going to tell you that." You can literally call him up like, "Hey, dude, I really have this problem." And it's a really personal question about, for example, how to invoice somebody, which is something you don't ask very easily. And they will just open up. And I think that's the difference between being a teacher or being a photographer. And I think that when you look at that show, which I just mentioned, that you really see that difference between being in photography to be famous or to be jet set. He was actually spending more money than the clients he shot, for example, in the show, right?
Yeah.
And I think when you look at guys like us, like Joe or Scott or Jay, we just love to teach, man. We just love to give our information to you guys out there. And it's nothing like holding back or whatever. It's the passion that we feel, and I think that you hit that really nice. You interviewed a few of those guys, including Rick, and I think
I was
Rick,
going to give them cred for exactly
yeah,
what you're saying. Just giving, very, very giving, especially someone on Scott's level. I mean, he's up there in the game, or at least visibility. Why does he have to come onto my peanut of a show? And he makes time, 2 hours no less.
yeah, of course. But that's the cool thing. And let's be honest, I remember that years ago I met Brian May a few times, and I also met Ingwie Malmsteen a few times, and I can tell you the difference between them is huge. I never want to see Malmsteen again.
Mm,
And he's just an ass. Done.
mm.
He's very.
Unfortunate.
And when you look at Brian May, like, okay, let's put it in perspective. Like, what is the best guitar player ever existed? Probably Jimi Hendrix, but okay. But then Brian May comes, probably for me, is number one because he creates such beautiful orchestrations. So let's say, which is the band that toured the most? Probably Queen. Which is the band that had the biggest audiences? Queen. And Brian May, Queen, Queen, Queen. It's always, if there's one person in the whole world that can be an arrogant prick, it's Brian May. Because he has nothing to, he has literally nothing to prove. He's an astrophysicist. He's Brian May. Done. Yeah. And I met him a few times, and the weirdest thing was that two things. There was after a music auction, and it was raining cats and dogs. And at one point, his bodyguard came out and he said, how many Queen fans are here? And we were with 10 people or so. He said, okay, come in. You can stand on the stage, but if you do something, we will kick you out. So I was standing on the stage. He played Too Much Love Will Kill You. He put out his Red Special and he played. And trust me, the vibrations of that wooden stage, I still feel it when I talk about it. Goosebumps. The thing was, he came out and he was sick. And it was literally cold and raining, real Dutch weather. And he was coughing, and his manager actually said, don't give any autographs, go home. And I heard him saying, like, listen, those people out there are the reason I'm who I am. I'm going to give him time. He was constantly coughing. He did the whole shebang. He gave everybody his autograph. He was coughing his lungs out. And at one point, he looked at me. London, 2 years ago, white guitar belt. You're a guitar player, right? And I was just going like, Brian May recognizes me. I was 18 years at that point. And he said, come with me. He opened up the trunk of his car, took out the guitar. He said, take a quick picture with the guitar. I took and I was just going like, what the heck is happening? He looked around. He said, did everybody get his autograph? Yes. Okay, now I'm going to go to bed. 2 years later, I met Anna Week, and we got really into Queen. And Brian May was doing his Back to the Light show, and that was in a really bad period of his life. So he was a lot of depression, and he wasn't doing well. And at one point, Anna Week was pregnant like crazy. She had a big melon here, and about to pop any moment. But we did want to go to that show. I don't know how it happened, but we wanted an autograph from Brian, and we ended up in his tour bus. And he signed something, and he looked at Anna Week, and he said, hey, how long? I said, any moment now. I said, okay, do you know if it's a boy or a girl? And I said, when it's a boy, it's going to be Brian. And he looked at me, and he said, don't ever call your son after a rock star. What if you don't like my music anymore? I said, that's not an option. And he said, okay, I'm very honored, and thank you so very much. And he led us out of the van, and we were standing in line, and not 1 minute later, there was this huge guy coming up to us with a Queen shirt on. And he said, Mr. May told me you can't wait in line anymore. And I was going like, did I do something wrong? And he just took me and Anna Week backstage. He said, he doesn't want a pregnant woman to be standing in line. Do you have seating tickets? And I said, yeah, we have seating tickets. He said, okay. And he just pulled out 2 tickets. He said, can I see your tickets? He said, okay, you already have the best seats. I'm going to put those 2 back. And I was walking to those cases with the crest from Queen. And he just looked at me. He said, you're a huge Queen fan, right? I said, yes. They want to touch them. Are you kidding me? I said, no, just touch it. So I touched all the gear, and he just put us in his seat, and he said, well, thank you so very much for being in our show. And he just went back. And now imagine this. This is such an icon. Very, very down to earth. And I think when you look at the Dutch mentality, that is a little bit of us. And the thing is and this is very positive towards Scott and towards Rick. Scott somehow has the ability to find people that are exactly like that. When I teach at Photoshop World, that's a huge event. There are a lot of fans there and a lot of people that want interaction. You know, it's the only trade show I know of where the attendees are actually mingling with the teachers. Because in every trade show, it's like you do your show, you get off stage, you sign some autographs, and you disappear. That was never my thing. When we invite Scott Kelby for an event in the Netherlands, he goes off stage and he immediately starts to mingle with everybody. The guy is just constantly giving out autographs, taking pictures, talking to people. And somehow all the people that teach at Photoshop World, so Rick Salmon and Scott and all the others, Joe McNally, they're all very, very down to earth and very friendly towards other people. And I think that's the right attitude. We are there to teach. We are there to learn stuff to you guys. And you can't do that if you think you're better than other people. And I think that's a very short career. And I'm in there for the long haul. So I think that openness to people, and it's not played, it's really who I am. I just love doing that stuff. And
Well,
let's
I'm
be honest,
glad.
you can work with your passion. What's the best thing in the world, right?
Exactly, exactly. You're never working a day in your life when you're doing it for love.
No, and a week does the bookkeeping, so she works. I only do the creative.
My wife is the exact same bookkeeper in our scenario. Yeah. Hey,
Yes,
if you don't mind, man, tell me a little bit about Anamika because you guys have been together forever. She's an integral part of your business on the
yeah,
bookkeeping alone. You guys have been in the long haul side by side, haven't you? If you want to talk about it, of
yeah,
course.
sure. No, and a week and I, we met each other at school, and we've never been apart actually. And the fun thing is also when you hire me, you hire Week. There's no option. There's no plan B. It's very simple. I'm there, and a week is there. And sometimes people go like, okay, I have to pay for 2 plane tickets, and I go like, yeah, but we fly economy comfort, so we don't fly first class.
Yep.
Yeah, but still we have to pay another ticket. And then I always go like, okay, so okay, I won't bring any week. I will pay for any week. But then on location, I need an assistant. I need somebody that helps me with lighting. I need an assistant for the crowd. And I need somebody that helps me with my gear. So I need 4 people. So how much will that cost you? I said, Week can do everything because Week doesn't need any instructions. Week just looks at me and she knows, okay, he needs that. And she will pick it up. Now, as soon as there are people there, and let's say after you get off stage, right? And there's always this line of people that want to talk to you. But in all honesty, I love to talk for hours with people, but you don't have the time.
Mhm.
You need somebody like Week who will just simply line the people up and go after 2 minutes, like, hey, we have to go to the next one. We have to go to the next one. And
That
sit
little
and make
nudger.
sure everybody has their book open, that they have the pen there, so I don't have to look for pens. The only thing I have to do is be myself, stand there, and just follow everything that Week sends my way. And the cool thing is, in between that she does that, she also helps out the crew with other stuff like, okay, the next speaker is there, put Frank's gear there, put Frank's gear there. She knows where it is. And sometimes I have everything set up on stage and I turn around like, okay, I have to grab my camera. And Annie goes like, it's already on the next place. And I go like, wow. So if you need somebody to replace Annie, I need 4 or 5 people. And we're just yin and yang. It's sometimes we're very opposites. And that's what attracts, I think.
That's good. That keeps it
Man,
fresh.
it's
Yeah.
a two-man work. And Tether Tools too. I learned about Tether Tools at one of my first Photoshop worlds. It's a really small company who only had the jerk stopper at that point. And look at where they are now. They're a huge company. Everybody knows Tether Tools. And Anoweek actually is, for the Dutch, is Mrs. Tether Tools because she distributes Tether Tools in the Netherlands. She makes videos about Tether Tools. So make sure you check out her Instagram at Tether Tools NL.
Happy to throw a link in the description for
Yeah,
sure.
does everything in English. So she has these orange themed stuff, and every day she has a video or a photo. And yeah, I couldn't believe. I don't think I can do without Week what I do.
Awesome. So she completes you, as the
Oh yeah,
saying goes.
we're soulmates without any doubt. That's also something that will never. You can never say never, but this will never go wrong. We just belong together. That's it. And especially when people see us working together at trade shows, they immediately go like, now I know why you always bring Week. Without Week, it would be terrible. It would be terrible, but you need so many. They don't realize how much work it is to give a 1 hour show. It's way more than 1 hour, and it can go terribly wrong if you only have 5 minutes between shows. Like on most trade shows, you have 5 minutes. Now imagine this, I'm done with my show, then I have to pick everything up, and a half hour later I have to be somewhere else, but I also have to give my attention, of course, to the viewers for the very simple reason. You are there for a reason, right? You want to talk to me. And it's so annoying when you walk up to somebody like, hey, I want to take your photo. No, I'm busy. And then you wait, and you wait some more, and you see that finally that guy is done, gets off stage. Hey, can I take your picture now? I have to be somewhere else. And it's not bad, but you're literally seen as an ass for the very simple reason you never have time for the attendees. With Week, it's very simple. 10 minutes before the show, I'm there. She sets everything up. I don't have to do anything. I just have to talk to the people in the audience. Like, hey, are you looking forward to what we're going to do? Yeah. Do you have any questions which you want me to do on stage? Yeah, I would love to see this. Okay, we'll try to incorporate that. And in the meantime, Week is setting up my laptop, is making sure that everything is perfect. The only thing I have to do is, okay, get on stage, grab my camera. I already know it's on. Tethering works. The software is already running. Take my pictures, and after the show I just lay down my camera, get off stage, talk with people, and in the back everything is cleaned up and she's lining up people. It's awesome. And
Beautiful.
literally, it's perfect. And you see that with a lot of photographers, by the way. Look at David Zeiser. Same
Rick
thing. It's
Salmon
like,
and Susan, they seem joined at the hip too.
yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut in.
And Joel Grimes and Amy.
Also,
Yeah, also really great.
yeah. It's a weird one. I do also notice it pop up consecutively, and I notice for myself with the dynamic in me and the wife, it fits really well. I mean, I think in particular for the creative medium, whether it's photography or otherwise, if your partner gets it, it's going to be a part of the
It helps.
relationship anyways. Yeah, and it helps absolutely.
Yeah,
How did
imagine
you
this.
find
I'm
it?
working so much with creativity and with photography. If you have a partner that's not interested, dude, that marriage is gonna fail and flunk like crazy. Because imagine this: you go to Dubai, and in all honesty, it's boring because, especially when we started out, it's literally like I gave him a list, like all the countries we visited in a year, and they went like, "Oh my God, you don't need vacation because you saw everything." I said, "You saw everything, dude. I'm at 8 o'clock at Schiphol. We land at around 8 o'clock at night because you have some layovers. You go to bed. 8 o'clock in the morning, your alarm clock goes off. You're groggy as hell because you have a jet lag.
Mhm.
You go to a trade show event with a taxi. You literally go in and you do your stuff. At 6 o'clock, you go away. You go for dinner with some friends. You go back to the hotel. The next morning at 6 o'clock, you have to get up, go to Schiphol, and fly back to the Netherlands. And the next day, we have a workshop. I didn't see anything about the countries. And when you have a partner that doesn't understand that, and that goes like, hey, Frank, I really want to see something. We're only working, and starts complaining, that will give a lot of friction. And a week from the start off, loved just being there and supporting the work. And it's not only supporting my work, it's the work that we do together. We built this whole company with the two of us. So
Yeah.
Tether Tools is 99% and a week. I'm the face and I do the video sometimes, but it's 99% and a week. That does all the grunt work, gets all the dealers. But the cool thing is he can use me as a stick between the door, like, hey, do you want to sell Tether Tools? Because we have Frank as an ambassador, and Frank can do workshops for you, and Frank is my husband. So whatever, and that
That makes the connection and it makes things move.
yes. And nowadays we did change some stuff. When we do now workshops abroad, we have this very simple rule in Europe. We do it with an RV.
Mhm.
So we bought a big RV and we just drive around.
Nice.
And we always try to do 1 week. So I teach 1 day and 6 days we just drive around the area and just take in all the sites. And when we go to the States or somewhere else where we have to fly, we always tell our client, like, okay, you pay me for the days that I'm on the trade show, but we don't charge a lot, but you have to pay for the hotel for a week. If we stay 2 weeks, it's very simple. The other week I pay, but it's always 1 week hotel, 2 days or 3 days trade show. Because
Smart.
I am so fed up with landing, teaching, and going back home without seeing anything. I want to land 2 days before the trade show. I want to walk around a little bit and meet up with a lot of the attendees of trade shows. That's the cool part, photo walks. It's great when you're out in a country and you're teaching at a trade show.
For sure.
And a lot of people you learn there, you meet there. And then after the trade show, we always do 2 days extra. And we just walk around with people that we met on the show, and they show you the most beautiful locations, which you can never find if you're not known to the area. And at that point, it's the perfect combination of travel, a little bit of holiday, and still work. And without any doubt, that would never work, because the holiday is the fun part. But you don't want a partner that as soon as you start to work, that goes like, okay, I will go shopping, you go do work. Because then why do I bring her? And with Enoweek, she loves doing the work on the trade shows. And if Enoweek wasn't there, I wouldn't drink probably for the whole day, because I always forget to drink and eat. So something just goes up and you have to drink. And I go like, oh yeah, I have a headache. Yeah, okay, drink something. Oh yeah, that's a lot better. And now you have to eat. Oh yeah, of course, I have to eat something. So yeah, she's very valuable to everything we do.
Awesome. I have the exact same thing with liquids. I forget to drink, and the wife will just, come on, you've been on 3 tours today, have a glass of water.
That's the thing.
Awesome. And I guess also with taking that holiday time, you're also keeping it all sane as far as the relationship goes. You know, you're doing the work, which you both have a mutual love, interest, and everything else for, but you're also getting a couple days together as a couple, whether it's
Yeah,
in company or just wandering off for a few hours on your own.
that's why we never do holidays. because we just combine it with workshops. And we do, since 2 years ago, we always take August off. So in August, I don't teach workshops, and that means that 2 weeks I'm just Netflixing and playing guitar and forcing myself not to touch any cameras for 2 weeks, which is impossible, but okay, I try. And then the other 2 weeks is mostly 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 week. We take the RV and we go to, for example, we love Scandinavian, like Norway. And then it's actually the challenge to take as many pictures as possible in those 2 weeks.
Fair enough.
And then I love to drive. And Anouk loves to stay. So what we normally do is we just strike a balance. So when we go to Norway, we just say like, okay, we're going to drive one day and do sightseeing. And then one day we're just going to park somewhere at 12 o'clock. And we're just going to stay there the whole day. And that's just so awesome, especially with the RV. And now with the mountain bikes, we just take out the mountain bikes and just start biking around. So it's, yeah, I think a very good balance.
Nice. And does she get into photography?
She always says that she doesn't know anything about photography, but don't.
She's lying.
She's lying.
She's lying.
She knows a lot about photography. She's just not confident enough to literally say something. And except on my work, sometimes she will go like, "Hey, I don't like that," and she's always right.
Good.
I don't tell her, but she's mostly right.
You got to have the hard feedback from somewhere, and close at home is best.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, not to press the question in the least and tell me if it's none of my business, but when you are on holiday, when she does shoot, is it the smartphone? Does she grab your Sony?
Yeah.
It's just keeping it easy with the phone.
Yeah. Oh, you mean I? Or,
no, her. And also you.
But I'm just on phone. And I mostly shoot with a combination. When I'm on a trip, when I'm on a mountain bike, I never bring a normal camera. I always bring a smartphone or an Insta360.
Fair.
Very simple reason: if I fall down, and that can happen, of course, when you ride trails, I don't want to hurt any gear. So I will hurt myself, but that's okay. And smartphones are great nowadays, especially when you look at the Huawei P40 and the P30 Pro. And this is done the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II. It's 12 megapixels, but it's a real camera. It's a camera that can make phone calls. And that's something that I missed. I love the Huawei, but it's always a phone that can take amazing images. And with this, I, for the first time, have a camera which can also take over my phone, because you have this shutter button. You have exactly the same performance that you have with your Sony camera in menus. So you can do spot metering, you can do whole scene, you can do continuous focus or not, auto exposure.
Nice.
It's very, very intuitive. So that's, and in the end, let's be honest, it's about the pictures, not about the megapixels. So yeah, so we both shoot a lot with smartphones. But when I have the chance, of course, I want to use the real camera.
Okay, fair play. Cool. That's good too, also for the balance, especially on holiday, not grabbing the big camera and just stepping back.
And in the end, people won't see the difference online. You know, online, I even have to scale down my smartphone images. As long as the lighting is good, the smartphone does great. It's about the image. It's not about the gear.
It's not the car. It's not the car, it's the driver. Absolutely. Yeah. I also like to think how 10 grand a gear won't save a boring story.
Nope.
Yep.
Correct. One spark of genius will.
Yeah. That's it. Well, Frank, man, I could talk to you all day, but I'm sure you have other things to do, especially with your busy schedule. Let's take it towards the end of things, and I guess I'll ask you the first question I ask people when they join me is Photo Tour Bruges, and the last question I ask people when they join me here on the Chit Chat on the virtual way. How do you feel about your photography?
Lots to learn. Every day I learn something new. And that's the cool part. As soon as you stop learning, you can literally just stop, because that's the end. So yeah, my photography has a lot of improvements still to be made. And I think that especially now that we have the pandemic, it really was time to think about. And I think when we start teaching, stuff will look totally different, because I experimented a lot with stuff in my head and also with some gear. And we got some new ideas. And this is the thing that I talked about at the start. At one point, you are stuck in a rut. You do the same thing. And I always try to do very, very different stuff. So I always force myself to not teach the same thing. So when I teach a workshop, I never prepare. There's a name, for example, the Classical Masters. And I have like 8 or 9 different setups that I use. I only use 3 every workshop or 4, but I have 9 that I know. And I always say, okay, I know 9, I have to do 18. And that can be variations, but I always ask students, hey, did you see this already? Yeah, okay, then I'm going to do something completely different. And I think now that we didn't shoot for a year, I am so literally on the point of exploding with ideas and with stuff that I want to do, that I think there will be a totally different way of photographing that would normally take me maybe 5 years. And now thanks to the pandemic, in 1 year, I will probably have some progress. Some people will like it, some people might not, but there will be difference. And some people may even look at the image and go like, I don't see any difference, but trust me, there is. It's the approach and the way that I use lighting. So yeah, you have to learn every day. If you think you know everything, look at Steve Vai, great guitar player, very, very humble, without any doubt. I think if you have to say the best guitar player ever lived, with distance, Steve Vai, it's insane. And even when you see interviews with him and they talk about like, hey, you know everything, he goes like, I know nothing. I have big hands and I just do stuff. And he learns every single day. And that's something like, look at all the modern artists. They all are so full of themselves, especially rap artists. They know everything and they do the stuff with their hands. And then you listen to the music and you take out auto-tune and they just suck. And then you listen at Freddie Mercury, no click track, no auto-tune. And he hits every single note perfect. And Freddie always said, he literally said this, I'm a musical prostitute, my dear. There's no different meaning in my songs. I'm just a musical prostitute. And I was just going like, dude, you wrote songs like Who Wants to Live Forever, which is highly, highly intense. Somebody to Love, a Bohemian Rhapsody. How can you say that your work is just musical prostitute? But that's the way he approaches it. And that's the secret of the success. If you think you're there, you stop learning. If you think you're at the bottom, you are so forced forward to learn. So always think there's somebody better. But also, and this is something that I always taught my students when I taught guitar, there are a gazillion perfect guitar players who are only sitting in their attic because they never come out. And this was, of course, in a time where there was no internet yet. So even if you are very, very good, if you don't show your work to people, if you don't build your audience online, you're screwed. You will never, ever succeed. And nowadays, there are a gazillion photographers online. It's really hard to stand out. And I'm very, very lucky that Scott actually found me. Because let's be honest, there's so much noise. And to stand out in all that noise, it's mostly, I believe what Scott said, it's the interaction I have with people online. I'm very open. If you ask something, you will always see me giving a like. So if you post something on my Facebook, it will never go unnoticed. I will also give a like, or I will give a reply. And that can be thanks or thank you. If I'm really busy, it will be TI, but thank you. But always a like. And I think that also gives that connection to the people. I'm not a photographer that posts once every month and then doesn't read the reviews. I read every single line of stuff that people write, even if it's negative. And you know, the weird thing is, if you look at my social media, find negative posts. Almost zero. There are almost no negative responses. Also on the videos I post, almost no negative responses. And I think that's the part what I also said about Brian May. Never forget yourself. Always be humble, because be honest, there's always somebody that's a lot better than you that people don't know yet. And if they don't like you, they will go to the next one. But if they really like you and you build an audience and you build your clients and you create something really good, people won't leave you because somebody is better. It's not about better. It's about networking. It's about liking someone.
Connection.
Like what Brian May said, what if you don't like my music anymore? Dude, that's impossible. With Yngwie Malmsteen, I still love his music, but he's an ass. So every time when I put up a CD from him, I go like, yeah, I don't want to listen to this crap. It's great music, but man, he's horrible. And you see his career going like up, and now it flunked like crazy. He doesn't want a singer anymore. He does his own singing because he's good enough. I heard it. He's bad. He's really bad. His guitar playing is great. I can't stand his voice, so I don't buy it anymore. So now he's doing drums, bass, singing, and he only hires a front man. His concerts are going down. And look at Queen. Freddie Mercury is gone, but they still sell out. And why? Because it's Queen. People love him. So try to do that in your work. No, don't only focus on photography. Focus also on the social part. But don't play it, because people will really see if you play it or if you're honest. And I'm honest, I just love the whole social media. I would die without Facebook or whatever. I love that interaction with people. Although I hate Facebook, but hey, that's something else.
It's mixed feelings. You're not the only one with mixed feelings on
Yeah,
social media, man. But I'm glad, as you say, and I can endorse 10,000%. You're humble, you're connected, and you care.
I care a
It's
lot.
it's good
Yes,
to see. That's what's going to keep you going through the ages, Mr. Doorhof,
I
as
hope
well
so.
as your extensive knowledge. And speaking of which, just before I let you go, please let people know where they can get in touch with you, your extensive knowledge, all your great photos, all that stuff. Plug away, please.
I think the thing that we focus on now and where we need a lot of help because we are a Dutch channel and we do everything in English, and sometimes that really works against me at YouTube. The frustrating part for us is we get a lot of responses on YouTube. You should have 1 million followers, and we only have 26,000 followers. And that's literally because I think a lot of the algorithms work against us. And that's the thing. I would really love to get a boost on our YouTube channel. We spend a lot of time and money on there to create videos that are really, I think, interesting and always a little bit educational. So check out our YouTube on Frank Doorhof, and everything else, all social media is just Frank Doorhof on Twitter, Facebook. I'm very active on Facebook and Twitter. Instagram, I'm very active on, and YouTube. But mostly if you want to push YouTube and if people are listening, just try to subscribe to YouTube and spread that, because we are really having trouble to building up our YouTube channel with subscribers. And I don't know why, because I think the content is great or good enough.
Are you listed in the Netherlands?
Yeah, we are listed in the Netherlands, and I
That
think
might be it.
that was my mistake. I should have listed in America.
Or
And
UK.
I also can't get verified somehow. On Instagram, I'm still not verified, and on Twitter, I asked them like 10 times, and I'm still not verified. And the reason you get is like, yeah, you're in the Netherlands. And I go like, so why? I go like, okay, so we need some help there. So that would be awesome. And everything else, just hit us up on social media on the Frank Doorhof.
Awesome. And again, I can endorse that 10,000%. Especially, man, your YouTube channel should have 1 million subscribers. You give away a whole wealth of knowledge, and it's good stuff too. You're not just filling time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, and I'll link all that in the description. And Frank, thank you so much for your chat. I really appreciate it, man. It's a true pleasure.
More than welcome. Digital handshake.
Yes. Oh no, we can only do chicken dance bumps now. Again?
We are 1.5 meter distance.
We are 1.5 meter distance. Good stuff, man. Thanks again. Drop
Thank you
by
so
anytime.
much for having me here.
Pleasure.